This conference will now be recorded.
As I said in the previous class, this 8086 microprocessor can access 1 megabyte of memory, and this 1 megabyte of memory is organized in two banks. One bank is called as even bank, other bank is called as odd bank. So what is an even bank? Even bank is a set of memory locations which consists of all the even addresses, and odd bank is a bank which consists of memory locations of all odd addresses. And actually this even bank is also called as bank 0, and odd bank is also called as bank 1. And a few more points, what I said in the previous class is whenever the memory is organized in two banks, there are a few signals which are being used to activate these banks. So if it is an even bank, the least address signal, which is A0. So this A naught is basically used to activate the even memory bank. And to activate the odd memory bank, there is a special signal which is called as bus high enable, and this is an active low signal. So this active low signal activates the odd bank. And in order to carry the data with the memory locations, the data lines which are being used are from D0 to D7, which is called as lower order data bus. And this lower order data bus actually carries the data with the even bank, and the higher order data bus carries the data with the odd bank. And why the 16-bit data bus is split into two 8-bit two 8-bit data buses? Why? Because whatever the memory that we use in the microprocessor based system or a microcomputer system, those memory chips consist of 8 data lines only, or some of the chips consist of one data line also, but most of the memory chips consist of 8 data lines. So that's why the 16-bit data bus is split into two parts: lower order data bus and higher order data bus. Lower order data bus is used to access the data at the even bank, and higher order data bus is used to access the data at the odd bank, and these are the signals which are used to enable these. And one more point that we need to remember is, among the 20 address lines which are available with 8086 microprocessor, not all the address lines are used to select a memory location. According to the size of the chips, only few address lines are used to locate a required location of the chip, whether it is even bank or it is odd bank. And what about the remaining address lanes? The remaining address lanes of 8086 microprocessor, these are being decoded, and the decoded signal along with BHE bar and A naught is used to select the memory chips. So what I said is, for 8086 microprocessor there are 20 address lines, and in order to locate a respective location of even bank or odd bank, not all the 20 address signals are used. Only few of the address signals are used to locate the address of the odd bank or the even bank. Let us take an example of the memory chips which consists of size 32 kilobytes. Suppose uh, uh, both of these chips provides a memory of 32 kilobytes. Memory of 32 kilobytes means this chip is of 16 kilobytes and this chip is of 16 kilobytes. Totally 16 plus 16, 32 kilobytes of memory is being provided by both of these chips. I'm just telling an example. So these are the chips which are providing a memory of size 32 kilobytes. So it is providing 16 kilobytes. It is providing 16 kilobytes. So actually, in order to access a location of this chip or this chip, the number of address lines the memory chip consists of are 14. 2 power 14 is nothing but 16 kilobytes. 2 power 16 is nothing but 64 kilobytes. So each memory chip, 16 kilobytes and 16 kilobytes. In order to locate a particular location of this even bank and odd bank, these chips are associated with 14 address input lines. So among the 20 address lines of 8086 processor, uh, 14 address lines are used to locate a location of the memory chip, and the remaining 6 address lines, those 6 address lines are decoded using the decoder circuit. And that decoder is also associated with BHE bar signal and A0 bar signal. The decoder which is generating the decoded signal with additional input of A0 acts as a chip select signal for even bank, and the decoder which is generating the decoded output signal associated with BHE bar acts as a chip select signal for odd bank. So we have seen few examples in our regular classes also. So you can see all these things in those examples. Okay. So next one is see here. According to the combination of A0 and BHE bar, what kind of access will happen with the memory that is being connected with the 8086 microprocessor? Let us suppose if A0 is 0 and BHE bar is 0. If A0 is 0, it means that the processor is accessing the even bank, and if BHE bar is 0, it means that the processor is accessing the odd bank. If both are zeros, A0 is 0 and BHE bar is 0, it means that processor is accessing both even bank and odd bank. So what it is accessing? It is accessing an 8-bit value from this memory bank and an 8-bit value from this memory bank. Totally 8 plus 8, 16-bit data value. Means it is accessing a word at an even address. At an even address. If BHE bar is 0 and A0 is 0, it means that 8086 processor is accessing a word at an even address using the data lines D0 to D15. If A0 is equal to 0 and BHE bar is equal to 1, it means that the processor is accessing a byte at an even address using the data bus D0 to D7. Similarly, if BHE bar is equal to 0 and A0 is equal to 0, it means that the 8086 processor is accessing a byte at an odd address using the higher order data bus. But there is no combination of 1 and 1. The combination of 1 and 1 indicates that there is no access. But actually, in the first three combinations, what we have seen is the 8086 processor can access a word at an even address. It can access a byte at an even address as well as odd address. But there is no such option is given using which the 8086 processor can access a word at an odd address. Word at an odd address means let us take an example of move 4001 comma AX. 4001 is an odd address. So if such a kind of instruction is available, then how the processor can access a word at an odd address? Word at an odd address means lower byte from the odd address and higher byte from the even address. In this way, the word will be accessed. So if the odd address is to be accessed for a word, then what kind of combination will be there for A0 and BHE bar? If such a kind of access is required, means a word is required to be accessed from the odd address, then this access happens in two cycles. During the first cycle, the odd bank is the byte at the odd bank is being transferred using the higher order data bus, and then in the next cycle the next byte from the even bank will be transferred using the lower order data bus. So what does it mean is, if there is a need to access a word at an odd address, that access of word at an odd address, access means read or write, that access of word at the odd address happens with two bus cycles. During the first bus cycle, a byte is being accessed at the odd address using the higher order data bus, and during the second bus cycle, the next byte is being accessed using the lower order data bus, and that byte is available at the even bank or accessed at the even bank. Now, whenever we are going for the accessing of 8086 microprocessor, we can think of both the types of memory. Actually, there are two types of memory. One is RAM, another one is ROM. So RAM and ROM both can be connected with 8086 processor. But what will be the occupation? Means in what way the RAM and ROM occupies the entire memory space. So this is what actually we need to remember. Means which kind of address space the ROM should occupy and which kind of address space the RAM should occupy. We have to remember that. We have to know that. So in order to say that, we should know that the type of softwares which are being installed are stored in the computer. Basically, there are two types of softwares. One is system software and next one is application software. System software means our operating system, and application software is nothing but the CAD tools that we are using like Xilinx, PSpice, all these things. So these are all application softwares. Operating system is must and should for a computer, and uh, application system. Application system is not must and should for our application. Depends upon my application. I can take piecewise. I can take Xilinx. I can take some other tool like MATLAB. All these things. So applications software, it is not permanent to me. If I need piecewise, then I remove Xilinx and then install piecewise. If I need MATLAB, then I uninstall piecewise and then install MATLAB. So the application software is not permanent to me, but the system software like operating system is permanent. Without the operating system, I cannot do anything. So the operating system which is permanent should be stored in the permanent memory, and the application software which is not permanent to me, it is to be stored in the temporary memory. Basically, we don't store that one also in temporary memory, but it can also be stored in permanent memory only. But what we need to remember is operating system must and should be there in the permanent memory, and that permanent memory is ROM. So there are many variants of ROM. One is PROM, EPROM, UVPROM. All these things are the different. All these are the variants of ROM device. So the ROM should occupy the address locations. The ROM should occupy the address space of the memory, which consists of the operating system. Basically, operating system is available in the last memory locations. Why? Because whenever the 8086 microprocessor is reset, then at that time all the registers are cleared except one register, that is chip select code segment register. This code segment register is initialized with FFH, and its associated register, which is IP, is initialized with 00. If we combine CS with IP, then the 20-bit address will be FF0H. It means that whenever the 8086 microprocessor is reset, or it is turned on, then at the time the processing that happens in the system, it starts from the location FFFF0H. So what should be there at those locations so that the system can start itself? That is the operating system. And basically there are 16 locations from FFFF0H to FFFF-FH, and these are the 16 locations which consists of the call instruction to the operating system procedures. So the last address space of the memory consists of operating system, and that memory should be the permanent memory, and the RAM can be after that PROM. So on ROM device you can perform only read operations, and on the RAM device you can perform read and write operations. And there are few operations that you need to do in order to access the memory. So first one is the 8086 processor has to generate a chip select signal in order to select the particular chip. And next one is the 8086 processor has to generate some control signals, and these control signals are read and write, and these control signals are memory read and memory write signals. And it has to allocate address for the memory location. So what kind of address need to be used to access a memory location? That address is to be passed over to the memory chip. So these are the three operations that are required to be done in order to access a memory location. Now what is the address range of the complete 1 megabyte of memory? Actually it consists of 20 address lines, so it can access 1 megabyte of memory, and the address range is 0000H to FFFFH. And you can see the signals, we can see the type of configuration you need to do with RAM and ROM. So these are the N address lines, and these are the M data lines. Basically for a memory chip, the number of data lines are 8, and the number of address lines of a memory chip are N, and this value is less than 20. This value is less than 20. Okay, the maximum size of the RAM and ROM can be of 512 kilobytes. This is the maximum size, and if it is the size of the memory, then two 512 kilobytes can be connected with the 8086 processor. So this is the maximum size of the chip that can be connected with the 8086 microprocessor, which is 512 kilobytes. And 512 kilobytes is nothing but 1 megabyte of memory. So if it is the case, if it is the maximum sized memory, then the number of address lines are 19 only, not 20. 19. So in this case also what we can say is the number of address lines a memory chip consists of is less than the number of address lines of 8086 processor. And these are the two power pins, and this signal indicates the control signal write bar and control signal read bar, and this is the chip select signal which is being generated from the decoder circuit. Similarly, for ROM device, it consists of M bit data bus or M data lines and N data lines. M is nothing but 8 and N is nothing but less than that of 20 address lines of 8086 processor. And these are the power pins. And this ROM device consists of read signal. Why? Because you can perform only read operation over the ROM. You cannot perform any write operation over the ROM. And this is the chip select signal. And this is the way in which the even bank and odd bank both are organized. This is even bank, which consists of all the even addresses, and this is odd bank, which consists of all the odd addresses. Next, let us take an example in what way we can interface the memory devices with the 8086 microprocessor. So this is a problem. I have taken this problem from the AKRA textbook, and in the class also we have seen 2 or 3 problems. So I think I have discussed this problem also. Now see here, the question is, it is required to interface 2 chips of 32K into 8 ROM and 4 chips of 32K into 8 RAM with 8086 microprocessor according to the following map. Map is nothing but address map, that is address range. So the address range of actually what does it mean is the 8086 microprocessor need to be connected with 2 ROM devices, 2 ROM chips, and each ROM chip consists of 32K into 8 size or 32 kilobytes of size. Similarly, the 8086 microprocessor need to be connected with the RAM chips, and how many RAM chips are there? 4 RAM chips, and the size of each RAM chip is 32 kilobytes. So totally, how much of the memory is being connected with 8086 microprocessor? 232. 232 means 64 plus 264s. So this is 192 kilobytes of memory. 192 kilobytes of memory is being connected with 8086 microprocessor. Okay, so address range is also given, but there are few problems wherein the address ranges are not given. If address ranges are not given, then what we need to do is you need to assign the last addresses to the ROM chips, and the following the following addresses can be assigned to the RAM chips. Okay, if addresses are not given for ROM and RAM, then you need to assign the last addresses to the ROM and the remaining addresses to the RAM device, same as that of the addresses given in this problem. So address range for ROM1 and ROM2, why a pair is given? Why? Because the memory is organized in 2 banks. One memory chip acts as even bank, other memory chip acts as odd bank. So combining this even bank and odd bank, it is of 64 kilobytes. 64 kilobytes, and this 64 kilobytes actually this ROM consists of an address ranging from F40H to F4Fh. So totally this is 64 kilobytes. So what we can say is the last addresses, these are assigned to the ROM devices, and the remaining addresses are assigned to the RAM devices. So if addresses are not given, you assign the last addresses to the ROM devices and assign the remaining addresses to the RAM devices. Now the address range for the pair of RAM is this one, and for the another pair of RAM is this one. Okay, and this address range itself indicates 64 kilobytes of memory chip pair. Now see here, uh, if we know the address range, or if we take the address range, then first of all we need to take the address map. This is the address map. Address map is nothing but the binary conversion of the addresses, or the binary conversion of the address range of the memory chips. So first of all, we have taken the address range of ROM, and then address range of RAM pair 1 and RAM pair 2. Just elaborating this one into binary format. Now see here, after taking the address range in the binary format for ROM pair and RAM pair, you need to divide this address range into two parts. In what way you need to divide the address range? Let us suppose I have ROM of size 64 kilobytes. RAM pairs are also of 64 kilobytes. 64 kilobytes means in order to access 64 kilobyte of memory, we need, or the processor needs, 16 address lines. So according to that, you divide the address map into two parts, wherein the left hand side consists of 16 address lines and on the right hand it consists of the remaining address lines. I hope you understand. According to the size of the ROM pair and RAM pair, you need to divide the address map into two parts. On the left hand side, it should consist of the address lines which are to be used to access the ROM pair, and on the left hand side it should consist of the remaining address signals. Okay, totally 16 address lines are required to access ROM pair and RAM pair. So A0 to A15, 16 address lines. This is acting as one part, and the remaining address lines are acting as another part. So actually the address lines which are connected as address inputs to the ROM or RAM chips are one less than the number of address lines available on the right hand side. So totally on the right hand side the number of address lines are 16, but among the 16 address lines we use only 15 address lines. Why? Because each ROM chip or RAM chip, I'm not discussing about pair, each ROM chip or RAM chip consists of 32 kilobytes of memory. 32 kilobytes of memory means each ROM chip or RAM chip consists of 15 address lines. So the address lines from A1 to A15, these are connected to the address inputs of ROM and RAM. Then what about A0? A0 is nothing but this is an address signal used to activate even bank. Okay. And then what about the remaining address lines which are left over on the left hand side? These are the address signals which are being used as an input to the decoder to generate the chip select signal. Okay. Now see here, A1 to A15, these are connected to the address inputs of memory chips, and A0 is used to select the even bank, and A16 to A19, these are used as inputs of the address decoder circuit. Come to this diagram. See here, these are two ROM chips, totally 64 kilobytes, and each ROM chip consists of 15 address lines, A0 to A14, A0 to A14, and RAM also consists of same size 64 kilobytes of pair. So each RAM consists of 32 kilobytes. So each RAM consists of 15 address lines, A0 to A14, A0 to A14, A0 to A14, and A0 to A14. So these 15 address lines are connected to A1 to A15 of 8086 microprocessor. A1 to A15, A1 to A15 means these address lines are connected to the 15 address lines of 8086 microprocessor. And this is even. These are odd banks. So all the even banks are connected to lower order data buses, and odd banks are connected to the higher order data buses, D8 to D15. So this is ROM. So it consists of OE bar. It is connected to memory read, and these are connected to RAM, consists of read bar signal and write bar signal. These are connected to memory read signal and memory write signal. Now see here. Actually, these address lines are connected to the address lines of RAM and ROM devices. The remaining address lines are A16 to A19. These A16 to A19 acting as the input for the decoder circuit. This is the entire decoder circuit. This entire part is a decoder circuit. Okay, in two ways we can design this decoder circuit. In the regular classwork, what I said is the decoder circuit consists of two levels of NAND gates, and first level consists of only one NAND gate, and the second level consists of as many number of NAND gates as the number of chip select signals are generated. So this is a little bit different. For each pair, a single NAND gate is used. So see here, A16 to A19 are the inputs for this NAND gate. It generates some signal which is acting as the second level NAND gate through a NOT gate. Why? Because it generates 0. So it is to be converted as 1 so that the output of the NAND gate can be 0. Okay. So if this NAND gate is connected to BHE bar, it is the chip select signal for the odd bank. Why? Because odd bank is enabled with BHE bar. And if this NAND gate is connected to A naught, so the output of this NAND gate acts as a chip select signal for even bank. Similarly, uh, this NAND gate, and why this bubble is being taken for the first set of RAM. For the first set of RAM pair, you can observe A17. A17 is 0. And for ROM devices, all the remaining address lines are ones. Okay. So what is our intention is, from the NAND gate we need to generate 0. At what condition the NAND gate generates 0? If all the inputs are ones. So uh, for this RAM pair, A16 is 1 directly connecting, A18, A19 are also ones, they are directly connected, and A17 is 0, it is to be converted into 1 using a bubble. Bubble is nothing but NOT gate. So all the inputs of the NAND gates are ones because of this NAND gate, NOT gate, and the output of this NAND gate is 0. And this 0 is passed over to the second level NAND gate, and for the second level NAND gate, this 0 will be converted as 1. And for the first NAND gate, BHE bar signal is connected, and for the second NAND gate, A naught is connected. So so this NAND gate generates a chip select signal for the odd bank, and this generates a chip select signal for even bank. Similarly, this one. In other form, what we can do is, you can take only one NAND gate, and this NAND gate consists of A18 and A19. Why? Because these are common to all the chips. And for the second level NAND gates, take A16, A19 as it is, and A16, A19 like this, and A16 and A19 like this for the second level NAND gate. Actually, in this way I discussed in the regular classwork. You can follow this method also. You can follow this method. So in this way, you can make a memory connection with 8086 microprocessor. Now let us come to the next one. The similar method you can follow whenever the different sizes of memory devices are given in order to interface with 8086 microprocessor. Okay, same method you can use. Now this is about interfacing of memory with 8086 microprocessor. Now let us come to the interfacing of IO devices with 8086 microprocessor. Whenever you are going to interface IO devices with 8086 microprocessor, you need to know that in what way we can connect IO devices with the microprocessor. Basically, the input or output devices cannot be connected directly with the processor. Why? Because the input and output devices may not be equal in features with 8086 processor or a microprocessor. The features of 8086, the features of the processor are not compatible with the features of input and output devices. In order to equalize the features of processor with the input and output devices, we need to make use of an interface, and that interface is nothing but port. It means that the IO devices are connected with the microprocessor not directly but through the ports. Ports are nothing but these are elements which carry the data in between input output devices with the processor. Okay, so there are some ports which are input, there are some ports which are output. The port which is connected to the input device is called as input port, and the port which is connected to the output device is called as the output port. And similar to the address which is there for a memory location, the IO devices also consist of some addresses, some sort of addresses. And these addresses are not the address of the IO devices. These are the address of the ports. So I'm repeating once again. The input and output devices cannot be connected directly with the processor, whatever maybe the processor is, whether it is 8085 or 8086 or 80186286, whatever it may be. The IO devices cannot be connected directly. They are connected through the interface, and the interface consists of basically ports. And what is the need of ports? Ports actually maintain the compatibility between the processor and the IO devices. Compatibility means it equalizes the features of input and output devices with 80 with the processor. So I'll give an example. Suppose microprocessor is the fastest element in the processor, and the IO devices are slower than the processor. whenever the processor sends a data to the output device, let us take an example of printer. If the processor sends a data to the output device, means printer, to print out, but whenever it sends the data, the printer is not in such a condition to take the printout of that file, that data. So what the data has, what the data, what means where the data is to be stored, the data will be stored in port. Okay, until the printer is ready to collect the file from the processor to print out, that file will be stored in that content will be stored in port. It means that port is maintaining the speed match between processor and the IO devices. In the same way, the interface circuit maintains the compatibility between the processor and the IO devices. So through the ports only the IO devices can be connected. Now, what are all the methods using which you can connect IO devices with processor? There are three methods. What these methods are: programmed IO, interrupt driven IO, and direct memory access. These are the three methods using which these are the three methods using which the IO devices can be interfaced with the microprocessor. But the ports are only used in this programmed IO method. In programmed IO method, we using ports, and in the other methods we use other ICs. Let us suppose interrupt driven IO, we use programmable interrupt controller IC, which handles the interrupts and allows the IO devices to interact with processor. And next one is direct memory access. So these are the three methods. For programmed IO method only, the ports are used. And in this method, there are two ways using which the IO devices can be connected with processor. And these two methods are memory mapped IO and IO mapped IO. So these are the two methods using which a processor can be connected with the IO devices. First one is memory mapped IO and IO mapped IO. These are called as memory mapping as well as IO mapping. So what is the meaning of memory mapping and IO mapping? In memory mapping or memory mapped IO, the IO devices are considered as memory locations. IO devices are considered as memory locations. Means some of the memory addresses are assigned to the IO devices. And these IO devices can be accessed by the processor as if they are the memory locations. The IO devices are accessed by the processor as if they are the memory locations. And in order to access the IO devices, the size of the address a processor needs is the 20-bit address if it is 8086 processor. When you come to IO mapped IO or IO mapping technique, in this technique, the IO devices are not being treated as memory locations. These are treated as IO devices only. IO devices are treated as IO devices in IO mapped IO. In memory mapped IO, IO devices are treated as memory locations. So in this IO mapped IO, devices are treated as IO devices only. And in order to access these IO devices, either 8-bit address or 16-bit address will be used. So according to the size of the address with which the IO devices can be accessed in memory mapped IO or IO mapped IO, I can say about how many number of devices can be accessed. In memory mapped IO, uh, 8086 processor can access 2 power 20, means 1 mega IO devices. 1048, 576 input or output devices can be connected with 8086 processor. But when you go to IO mapped IO, 16-bit address can be used to access the IO devices. So 2 power 16, 64 kilobyte means 65,536 IO devices can be accessed with the processor. Now see here, as I said just now, IO devices are treated as memory locations, and if it is the case, then whatever the instructions used to access the memory locations, these instructions can be used to access the IO devices also. Whereas in IO mapped IO, there are separate instructions used to access the IO devices. What these instructions are? In instruction and out instruction. With in and out instructions, there are only two registers which are used: AL, AX, AL or AX, and DX. AL or AX consists of data value, DX consists of the address of the port, and we have discussed this one in the last class. So These are the instructions using which the IO devices can be accessed, and these are the instructions which are used to access the IO devices. As I said just now, uh, in this IO mapped IO, only two registers are used: accumulator and port address, which is there in DX register. Whereas in memory mapped IO, any type of register you can use to access the IO device. Now, next one is uh, basically uh, 1 megabyte of means 1048576 input or output devices can be connected with processor. Means all the IO devices can occupy the entire memory spacing, but it is not possible. But devices can occupy the entire memory spacing. Means some space of the memory is being occupied by the IO devices. Whereas it is not the case in IO mapped IO, memory space is not being used by the IO devices. And this memory mapped IO technique is used whenever a small amount of memory is required for the system, and this IO mapped IO technique is used whenever large amount of memory is required for the system. Means for the large systems, this IO mapped IO technique is used. For the smaller systems, memory mapped IO technique is used. But most of the cases we use IO mapped IO technique only. Why? Because it doesn't occupy or it doesn't consider the memory location or memory size. And one more point is, in order to access the IO devices under memory mapped IO technique, the type of control signals are memory read signal and memory write signal. Whereas in the IO mapped IO technique, the type of control signals which are required to access the IO devices are IO read signal and IO write signal. And for memory mapped IO technique, the M by IO bar is asserted to high, and in the IO mapped IO technique, the M by IO bar is asserted to low. As I said just now, that IO devices can be connected with the 8086 microprocessor using the ports. Through the ports, the IO devices are connected with the 8086 processor. But where these ports are available? These ports are basically available in a separate chip which is called as programmable IO ports or programmable peripheral interface (PPI). There are several names for 8255 IC: programmable peripheral interface, programmable parallel port, and programmable input output port. These are all the names of 8255. So this is an IC which consists of ports, and totally there are three ports. What these ports are: port A, port B, and port C. And it is TTL compatible, and it is basically used with Intel microprocessor family. And among the three ports, port A, port B, and port C can be used as a normal port, and also this port C can be used to handle the control signals. And these control signals are called as handshaking control signals. Apart from read signal, write signal, there are few more signals which are being transferred in between processor and the IO devices in order to perform the data transfer activity. So these control signals are called as handshaking control signals, and these handshaking control signals are handled by port C. And there are three modes of operation in 8255. There are two mode of operations. One is BSR mode, next one is IO mode. In IO mode there are three modes. One is mode 0, next one is mode 1, and third one is mode 2. Mode 0 is called as simple IO mode, wherein all the three ports acts as ports: port A, port B, and port C. Mode 1 is called as strobed IO mode, and this is the mode in which only two ports are used: port A and port B. Port C is used to handle the handshaking control signals. When you go to mode 2, it is called as strobed bidirectional IO mode, and this is the mode in which only port A is used. And this port A acts as bidirectional port. At the same time, port A can be used as input port, and port A can be used as output port. And what about port B? There is no significance of port B in mode 2. Then what is port C? Port C handles all the handshaking control signals. Okay, I'm repeating once again. Mode 0 consists of three ports for data transfer: port A, port B, and port C. Mode 1 consists of only two ports: port A and port B. Port C is used to handle the handshaking control signals. And mode 2, actually it uses port A only, and this port A acts as bidirectional port. port C is used to handle the handshaking control signals. Now this is the internal architecture of 8255 programmable peripheral interface IC. You can see here these are the port A lines, port B lines, and these are the lines of port C. One point that we need to remember in 8255 is among the three ports, port C can be used as two 4-bit ports. The size of each port is 8 bits. Port A is 8 bit, port B is 8 bit, port C is also 8 bit, but you can use port C also as 4-bit ports. There are two 4-bit ports, PC0 to PC3, this is port C lower, PC4 to PC7, this is called as port C upper. So port A and port C upper, it is being handled by group A control, and port B and port C lower, these are being handled by group B control, and these two are instructed by read write control logic, which is available in 8255. Okay, so this is data bus buffer. So what is data bus buffer? As I said just now, whenever the processor sends any content to the output device, if the output device is not ready, then that content, that data will be stored somewhere else, and that somewhere else is nothing but data bus buffer. It will be stored in data bus buffer. If the output device is ready, that data will be transferred from the data bus buffer to the output device for the activity. So the data will be stored over here. When the processor is sending the data will be stored in the data bus buffer, and from the data bus buffer it will be transferred to the output device. If the processor is reading the data from the input device, that data will be stored in the data bus buffer first, and from the data bus buffer it will be transferred over to the processor. And these are the data lines using which the data will be transferred in between 8255 and 8086 processor. These data lines D0 to D7, these are connected to the lower order data bus of 8086 processor, that is AD0 to AD7, and these are the power supply inputs, and these are nothing but read bar signal and write bar signal which are being generated by the 8086 processor. And these are the two address lines. What these two address lines are? These are the two address lines which selects whether port A is to be used, or port B is to be used, or port C is to be used. Okay, if A0 and A1 combination is 00, then 8086 processor is using port A. If this combination is 01, processor is using port B. If this combination is 10, processor is using port C. If this combination is 11, it means that the processor is interacting with a special register which is available in 8255, and that register is called as control word register. So what is a control word register? Control word register is such an element in 8255 which configures the port for input and output activity. As I said, a port can be used as an input port, or it can also be used as an output port. So in what way a port is to be configured, that is decided by a value in the control word register, and this control word register is available in read write control logic of 8255. And whether the processor is handling the control word register, or it is handling port A, or it is handling port B, or it is handling port C, that is decided by the combination of address lines A0 and A1. These address lines A0 and A1 can be connected to any two address lines of 8086 processor, but basically these two address lines are usually connected to the lower order address lines of 8086 processor. What those address lines? A0 and A1. These are connected to A0 and A1. So how the addresses will be? Let us suppose 7400 is the address of port A. Then if these two address lines are connected to A0 and A1 of 8086 processor, then for port B the address is 7401, for port C the address is 7402, and for control word register the address is 7403. Now this is the reset signal, same as that of the reset of 8086 processor. Whenever the reset input is applied, then the entire 8255 will get reset, and all the ports acts as input ports. And this is CS bar, and this CS bar is nothing but chip select signal. So what is chip select signal? It is same as sort of the chip select of the memory device. So actually what I said is these are the two address lines which are connected to the two address lines of the processor A0 and A1. The remaining address lines of the processor, right from A2 to A19, these are connected to the decoder and the output of the decoder is connected as a chip select input. These are connected to the two address lines of the processor. Remaining 18 address lines of the processor, these are decoded, and then the decoded output is connected as a chip select input for the 8255 to activate. So this is about 8255. As I just said about the each and every component of this is about the explanation of that. Uh, what I said is 8255 operates in two modes. 8255 operates in two modes. One is called as BSR mode and next one is called as IO mode. BSR mode is basically bit set or reset. Bit set or reset mode. Bit in the sense port C line. This is the mode using which you can individually set or reset the port C line. You can set or reset the individual port C lines using this mode. And what for this mode is, this is the mode using which you can handle the handshaking signals. Okay, next one is IO mode. This is the actual mode wherein the ports can be used for IO activity, input and output operation. And in this mode is further classified into two: mode 0, mode 1, and mode 2. As I said just now, mode 0 consists of all the three ports. Port A, port B, and port C can be used as ports, whereas in mode 1 only port A and port B can be used. Port C is not used for data transfer. This port C is used to handle the control signals. In mode 2, port A can be used as bidirectional port. There is no significance of port B. Here you can see IO, 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 IO means they can be used for data transfer. But here port B cannot be used for data transfer. Only port A is used for data transfer. Now here port A is a bidirectional port. Now port C is used to handle the control signals. Now let us come to BSR mode. BSR mode is such a mode using which the individual port C bits can be set or reset. And this mode is used to control the handshaking signals, control signals. See here. The control word register is of size 8-bit, and this is the bit D7 which decides whether the 8255 need to be operated in BSR mode or it need to be operated in IO mode. If this bit is 0, it means that the 8255 is operating in BSR mode. If this bit is 1, the 8255 operates in IO mode. Let us suppose this D7 is 0, it means that 8255 is operating in BSR mode. If it is the case, then what the other bits will do? So the other bits are D5, D6, D4, D5 and D6. These are the unused bits. There is no significance of these three bits. And the remaining 4 bits decide which port C line need to be set or reset. See here, D1, D2 and D3. If these three bit combinations is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, it means that port C 0 line is actually these are to be connected here. These are shown here. So this column indicates port C line. If these three bits are 0, 0, 0, it means that port C 0 line is being set or reset. If this combination is 1, 1, 1, port C 7 line is being set or reset. Means these are the three bits using which one of the port C line will be selected. And what we need to do with that selected port C line, whether to set or reset, that is decided by D0 bit. If suppose D3, D2 and D1 is 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1 means 5, means PC7 line is, if this bit is 0, it means that PC7 line is, PC5 line is cleared, it is set to 0. If this bit is 1, PC5 line is set to 1. Next, in IO mode, what I said is this D7 decides whether it is in BSR mode or in IO mode. So this is D7. If this D7 bit is 0, it means that 8255 is operating in IO mode. 8255 is operating in IO mode, and this is the mode in which you can say whether port A is acting as input port, or port B is acting as input or output port, or port C is acting as input or output port. And the mode of operations of the ports is also decided here. See here. D5 and D6. These are the two bits which decides the mode of operation of port A. As I said just now, port 0, port A, uh, port A can operate in mode 0, mode 1 and mode 2. Port B can operate in mode 0 and mode 1, and there is no mode of operation of port C. There is no mode of operation of port C. If these two bits, these are the two bits which indicates the mode of operation of port A, mode of operation of port A. So if these two bits are 0 0, port A operates in mode 0. If these two bits are 0 1, mode 1. If these two bits are 1 0, mode 2. So after deciding the mode of operation of port A, we need to decide whether the port A is acting as an input port or output port, and that is being decided by D4. If this D4 bit is 0, port A acts as an output port, and if this bit is 1, port A acts as an input port. Next, D3. D3 decides the configuration of port C upper, port C lower. Why? Because port C lower come under the group of port A. So whether port C lower to be acted as output port or input port, that is decided by this bit. And this D2 indicates the mode of operation of port B, and port B operates in only two modes, mode 0 and mode 1. If it is 0, mode 0. If it is 1, mode 1. And D1 indicates whether port B need to be operated as input port or output port, that is decided by this bit. And D0 indicates the mode of operation of port C upper. Actually this is port C lower, and this is port C upper. Okay. Port C upper and this is port C lower. So this is the configuration of control word register in IO mode. And what we need to do is, when we are going to interface the IO devices with 8086 processor through the 8255, which consists of ports, then first and foremost thing that we need to do is, you need to frame a particular value for the control word register so that the ports can be operated as input or output port with particular mode of operation, required mode of operation. And then you send that value into the control word register, and then you write the instruction sequence to perform your own IO activity. This is what the operation that you need to do. The first and foremost thing that we need to do is, you need to prepare a particular value for the control word register in order to configure the ports as input or output for particular mode of operation, and then send that value into the control word register, and then you write the program for the IO activity. Let us take an example of interfacing of some of the IO devices with 8086 processor. Here I discuss how A to D converters and D to A converters can be connected with 8086 processor. Let us take an example, how to interface analog to digital converter with 8086 processor. There is a ADC which is available in IC form, and that IC consists of the number 0808 or 0809, both are the same ICs. And this IC consists of successive approximation A to D converter, which is the fastest A to D converter available so far. Okay, and the conversion delay for this A to D converter is 100 microseconds at a frequency of 640 kilohertz. And what this A to D converter will do is, this A to D converter accepts 8 different analog signals, and among the 8 different analog signals, only one analog signal will be selected, and that analog signal will be converted into digital form, and those digital values are available over the digital output lines. So this A to D converter selects one of the analog signal among the available 8, and then converts that one into digital, and then digital output will be available over the data output lines. Okay, so for the successive approximation A to D converter, there are two special signals which are being handled, which are to be handled. What those special signals are? Start of conversion signal, it is basically a pulse, and end of conversion signal. When the analog input is connected to the successive approximation A to D converter for the conversion process, in order to start the conversion, the user has to apply a pulse to the A to D converter. And what is that pulse? That pulse is called as start of conversion. Pulse is nothing but 0 1 0. 0 1 0 is nothing but pulse. So first of all, the user has to apply the start of conversion pulse to the A to D converter. Once the A to D converter gets start of conversion pulse, it starts converting the selected analog input and then converts that. Once it converts the analog signal into digital signal, it generates another signal as an indication that the conversion process is over. That signal is called as end of conversion. Once the end of conversion signal is obtained, what the user will do is user will collect the digital data from the digital output. This is what the operation that is happening. So in order to interface an A to D converter with 8086 processor, there are 4 different steps. So what are these steps? First of all, you need to ensure that the analog signal is stable over the input line. After you find that the analog signal is stable over the analog input line, then you need to apply a pulse to start the conversion process. What is that pulse? Start of conversion pulse. After getting the start of conversion pulse, this A to D converter starts converting the analog into digital. Once the conversion process is over, as an indication to the user, it generates another signal which is called as inversion, end of conversion. After getting the end of conversion signal, the processor need to collect the data, and where the data is available over the digital output lines. So this is what the steps which we need to follow while interfacing or writing a program to interface A to D converter with 8086 processor. See here, this is the pin configuration of A to D converter. You can observe 8 IP lines. IP lines are nothing but analog input lines. These are from IP0 to IP7. These are 8 analog input lines. So among the 8 analog input lines, only one analog input line will be selected. In order to select one analog input line, it consists of some sort of address signals. What these address signals are? A, B and C. If its combination is 000, then IP0 will be selected. If its combination is 101, then analog signal available at IP5 line will be selected. If this combination is 111, then the analog signal over IP7 line will be selected for the conversion process. And this is the pin dedicated for start of conversion pulse, and this is the pin dedicated to generate the end of conversion signal. And after conversion of the analog into digital, the digital signal will be available over the digital output lines. And what these are output lines? These output lines are A0, O0, O1, O2, like that up to O7. This is of size 8 bit. O0 is LSB, O7 is MSB, and it consists of power supply lines, VCC, ground, V reference. If this V reference plus is connected to 5 volts, then it generates, means it considers the 5 volts as the reference voltage, and according to that, the conversion process will happen. Now see here, this is the combination of A, B and C to select the analog signal, as I said just now. And the minimum width of SOC pulse is 100 nanoseconds. ALE pulse width is also 100 nanoseconds. Basically, this is connected to some, this is connected to ground through a capacitor. And clock frequency is maximum of 1280 kilohertz. And the conversion time is 100 milliseconds at 640 kilohertz. Resolution is of 8 bit, because it generates 8 bit output. And these are the values for V reference plus and V reference minus, and these are the voltage levels for logical 0 and logical 1 for input at input and output. Let us see the example. So this is an example interface A to D converter 0808 with 8086 using 8255 ports. Use port A of 8255 for transferring the digital data output of ADC to the processor. CPU means processor, and port C to handle the control signals. What control signals are there? There are two control signals. One is EOC, next one is SOC. So these EOC and SOC are to be handled by port C. Assume that an analog signal is present at the input 2 of the ADC, and a clock input of suitable frequency is available for ADC. Whatever it may be, a suitable frequency we need to take. Draw the schematic diagram and write the assembly language program for this. So what he said is, this is the diagram. This is 8255 and this is A to D converter, and at this part you can observe the 8086 microprocessor. Here you can find 8086 processor. This is 8255, this is A to D converter. So what has been given here is, whatever the digital output that is available at the A to D converter over the lines O0 to O7 digital output lines, that digital output need to be collected by the port A. So that's why these lines are connected to port A. So that's why port A acts as an input port. So port A should collect the digital output from the ADC. So that's why port A is an input port. Next, port C is to be used to handle the control signals. What are the control signals? Start of conversion, end of conversion. So what we know here is port C can be used as two different 4-bit ports. So one 4-bit port I'm using it as an output port, and another port I'm using that one as a input port. So PC0 to generate SOC pulse, PC7 to get EOC pulse, and port B, which is remained, that port B used to select the analog input 2. What it has been given is the analog signal is available over IP2 line. So the analog signal which is available at IP2 line need to be selected. In order to select that, the address lines A, B and C are to be applied with 101, sorry 010. If it is 010, then the analog signal available at IP2 line will be selected for the conversion process. In order to apply that value, port B is used. So from this diagram, what we can say is port A acts as an input port, port C lower acts as an output port, port C upper acts as an input port, and port B acts as an output port. According to this configuration, I need to frame the value to be transferred in control word register. IO mode, mode 0 of port A, and port A acts as an input port, port C upper acts as an input port, mode 0 of port B, and this port A acts as an output port, and port C lower acts as an output port. So this value need to be transferred in the control word register. Now this is the program. 98 is transferred to the control word register, and then I need to select input 2. In order to select input 2, this 2 value is to be transferred to port B. And the next one is I need to apply SOC pulse. SOC pulse. Pulse is nothing but 0, 1, 0. 0 changes to 1, 1 changes to 0. It is nothing but pulse. So that pulse need to be generated at port C line, that is PC0. So what I am doing here is I am sending 0 to port C, and then 1 to port C, and then 0 to port C. Then at this port C line, the output will be SOC pulse. Once the SOC pulse is generated, then the processor need to check for whether the data is digital data is available or not at the digital output lines. So where the digital output is available, digital output is available over the output lines of A to D converter, which are connected to port A. And actually this is not port C, this is port A. This is port A. So after applying the SOC pulse, the processor need to read port A, and then it has to check whether the port A consists of the port A has got, sorry, this is port C only, not port A, this is port C. Why? Because I need to check for EOC signal, and this EOC signal is available at port C line, that is 7th line, PC7 line. So I need to read port C. So input AL comma port C means I am reading port C, wherein PC7 line, that is MSB, is being checked by using RCL, and this PC7 bit will be transferred to the carry flag. Now I am checking whether the carry flag is set to 1. If carry flag is set to 1, it means that EOC signal has been reached. Okay, so in order to check that, I have to take these three uh, instructions. Once the 8086 processor gets the EOC signal, then it will come out of the loop, and then it means that the digital signal is available at port A, and that port A will be read by the processor to get the digital output in AL. So this is the process that is being followed. Next, let us come to the conversion of digital into analog signal, D2A converter, or interfacing of D2A converter with 8086 processor. D2A converter is also available in IC form. Its IC number is 0800. What this IC will do is it will convert the digital signal available at the input lines B1 to B8. B1 to B8, these are the analog input lines. B8 is LSB and B1 is MSB. So whatever the digital signal available over these lines, those signals will be converted into analog, and that analog signal is not available in the form of voltage, it is available in the form of current, I out. So you can collect the analog current from pin 2, you can collect the analog current from pin 4. So this is the circuit diagram, and we have done one laboratory experiment also, wherein we have generated a triangular waveform as well as square waveform. So the same circuit we can observe over here, and this is the converter which converts the I out into V out. This is the program, and you know very well about this program. Let us come to the next ICs which can be connected with 8086 processor. Apart from 8255, there are few more ICs which are to be connected with the processor, and these ICs are 8251, 8253 or 8254, which is called as programmable interrupt timer. And next IC is keyboard and display controller, and the fourth one is DMA controller. So I discuss only about these two. This is 8251. 8251 is 8251 is programmable interrupt controller. What I said is IO devices can also be handled by the processor using the interrupts. Means whenever the devices wants the service of the processor, they sends the interrupt signal to the processor. After getting the interrupt signal, the 8086 processor will accept that interrupt and then gives its service to the IO device. Okay, so this is not 8251, this is 8259. 8251 is USART. 8259 8259 is programmable interrupt controller, and this programmable interrupt controller uh, can handle the interrupts generated by the IO devices. Each interrupt controller can handle only 8 different interrupt signals. These are the interrupt signals, nothing but request signals from the IO device to get the service of the processor. So each 8259 IC can handle 8 different interrupt signals. If you extend 8259 further, you can handle 64 different interrupt signals. Means just by connecting one 8259 with 8 different 8259s, then you can handle totally 64 interrupt signals. See here, this is the pin configuration of 8259, and this is the internal diagram of 8259. See here, you can observe IR lines over here, and these lines are called as interrupt request lines. So its circuit is like this. Actually, processor is there, IO devices are there. In between processor and IO devices, this chip is available, 8259. So 8 different IO devices can send the interrupt signal to the interrupt controller, and this interrupt controller resolves the priority among the interrupt signals available and then sends the highest priority interrupt signal to the processor. This is what the operation that is happening. 8 different IO devices can send the interrupt signals to the processor, but not directly to the processor. They send the interrupt signal to the interrupt controller. After getting the interrupt signals, the interrupt controller resolves a priority among the available interrupts and then sends only the highest priority interrupt to the 8086 processor. After getting the interrupt signal, the 8086 processor will handle that interrupting input or output device. This is what the operation that is happening. You can also connect one 8259 with 8 different 8259s, and the output of all the 8 different 8259s are connected as inputs for the master 8259. In this way, you can handle 64 interrupting devices. Now let us come to the meaning of means or the operation of this programmable interrupt controller. See here, this is data bus buffer using which the data can be transferred from the processor to the 8259, and using this data bus buffer, the 8086 processor can send some command words, as well as it also sends the address of the interrupting device. This is a read write control logic to handle read and write operation, and this is a cascade buffer comparator. There is a small explanation of this. I don't explain all these things now. Why? Because it takes time. Now let us come to the meaning of this, what this is. See here, uh, actually this is the device which generates the interrupt signal, and that interrupt signal is transferred over to the INTR pin of 8086 processor. After getting that interrupt signal over INTR pin, the 8086 processor generates an acknowledgement signal, and that acknowledgement signal will be passed over to the control logic. So this interrupt request register, it consists of all the IR lines which are available with the request interrupt request from IO devices. It is a register which consists of request values, or suppose this is a register which consists of 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 1. It means that IR0 and IR7 has got the interrupt signals. Then what will happen here is, whenever the interrupt signals are reached over here, then this 8259 checks which interrupt input, which interrupt signal need to be masked and which interrupt signal needs to be unmasked. That is decided by interrupt mask register. Let us suppose all the 8 input lines are available with the interrupt request inputs. Then among these interrupt requests, which interrupt requests are to be masked, that is decided by IMR. Let us suppose in IMR the value is 1, 6 zeros and then 1. Means among the available 8 interrupt request inputs, the interrupt at IR0 and the interrupt at IR7, these interrupts are only accepted and the remaining interrupts are rejected. Okay, so this will decide which interrupt is to be accepted, which interrupt is to be rejected. Now the interrupt at IR0 and interrupt at IR7 both are getting accepted. Once both the interrupts are accepted, the priority will be resolved over here. Why? Because only one interrupt need to be transferred over to the processor. Then this priority resolver resolves the priority among the available or unmasked interrupts, and then sends the highest priority interrupt to the processor. So in service register is a register which indicates the interrupt that is presently being serviced. If ISR 0 bit is 1, if ISR 0 bit is 1, it means that the interrupt signal which is available at IR not line is presently in service. That is indicated by in service register. So in this way, the interrupt signals are handled by the processor using 8259. Now let us come to the next IC, which is called as counter or timer IC. This IC is 8253, and there is one more IC which is also called as timer IC, and its number is 8254, 8253 or 8254. Both are the timer ICs, and using these ICs, the 8086 processor can provide the timing delays. This 8253 consists of three counters: counter 0, counter 1, and counter 2. And at a time only one counter will be selected, and the job of each counter is provide some timing delay. How the timing delay will be provided? This counter consists of a register which is filled with a 16-bit value, Once a gate signal is applied and a clock signal is being applied, then the register which is available in this counter gets updated by 1 at each clock pulse. And once the register comes to the maximum value, that is FFFFH, then the counter stops, and then output line will become 1, which indicates that there is a time delay of specific period is being generated. So the initial values into the counter register will be transferred by using data bus buffer, and this is read write control logic, and this consists of control word register. Basically, the counter 0, counter 1, counter 2, these are the three counters using which timing delays can be generated. How the timing delays can be generated? There is a counter register available over here whose size is of 16 bits, and that is filled with a maximum value, or that is filled with a some value, or you can make it 0 also. Then once you apply the clock pulses at 65,536th clock pulse, the counter register it becomes maximum and then converted to 0 again. Then at that time, the output signal will become 1. Once this output signal is 1, it means that a delay has been provided, which is of 65.536 millisecond, and that is according to the clock pulse. So in this way, 8253 or 8254 can be used to provide the time delay. So this is all about the interfacing of memory and IO devices with 8086 processor. Now time is 12:25. Now stop the lecture here, and if possible, if we have another class, we can conclude the remaining three topics. Madam, shall we conclude today's class? Hello. Okay. Thanks to all the students who have joined in the today's class. So if we have another class, we will discuss the remaining topics. So thanks. Thank you for attending. Thank you.